दम भरे दूसरों के जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मुश्किलें पड़े तो हम पर इतना कर्म कर, साथ दे तो धर्म का, चले तो धर्म पर, खुद पे हौसला रहे, बदी से ना डरे, दूसरों के जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना।
Good morning, all. Giving tribute to our master Samuel Hahnemann, who have made this divine science for all of us and taught us dare to be wise. Seeking blessings from our Guru, Dr. Prafull Vijayakar sir, who have breached this modern science with the homeopathy and made homeopathy easy like mathematics. Jai Hahnemann, Jai Homeopathy, Om Vijayakaraaya Namah. So we are in the journey of reading books, and we all have read first book of theory of separations, and then this is the modern science and homeopathy, and along with organon of medicines aphorisms. So today we are reading further aphorisms from organon 6th editions. So yesterday we have learned that it was aphorism number 31, that our existence is partly affected by the psychical and partly affected by the physical cause. Unless and until our body or our mind is susceptible to that, then and then it is affected. So furthermore, in aphorism number 32, but it is a quite otherwise with the artificial morbific agent which we term as medicines. Every real medicines, namely, act at all times, under all circumstances, on every living human being, and produce in him its peculiar symptoms, distinctively perceptible if the dose be large enough, so that evidently every living human organism is liable, and as it were inoculated with the medicinal disease, or at all times and absolutely unconditionally, which, as before said, is by no means the case with the natural disease. So, for natural disease, we require a predispositions, but for a medicine act unconditionally. There is no condition is required. This is what Master is telling us. Why? In accordance with this fact, it is undeniably shown by all experience that living organism is much more disposed and has a greater liability to be acted on and to have its health deranged by medicinal power than by the morbific, noxious agent and infectious miasm. Or in other words, that the morbific, noxious agent possesses a power of morbidly deranging man's health that is subordinate and conditional. So, if there is some trauma, there is some condition which is required for the man's health to be deranged. So, it requires conditions, often very conditional, while the medicinal agent have an absolute unconditional power greatly superior to the former. That means the disease power. So, what is the aphorism? Footnote 17 says that experience tells us that a striking fact in the corroborations of this is that whilst previously to the year 1801, when the smooth scarlatina of Sydenham still occasionally prevailed epidemically among children, it attacked without exception all children who had escaped it in a former epidemic. In a similar epidemic which I witnessed in Koningsletter, on the contrary, all the children who took in a time a very small dose of belladonna remained unaffected by this highly infectious infantile disease. If medicine can protect from a disease that is raging around, they must possess a vastly superior power of affecting our vital force. So this is what the experience teaches us, that those children were given a belladonna, they are not affected during the epidemics of scarlatina in Sydenham in 1801. So this experience tells us that our medicine has a superior power than the morbidly affected natural disease noxious power. So now further we are reading the same book which we have learning since many days. So this was a book of homeopathy and modern science. So today we are dealing with, up till now we have learned the basic concept of the applied physiology. Before that we have learned the embryology. Before that we have learned the basic vaccines and vaccinosis and immunology. So today we are reading the endocrinology. So this is what Sir has written in this book. It's just a crux of all the endocrinology. Endocrinology is not a short learning, it is a vast learning. But in one days or one lecture, we have just make a crux of it and learn something from Sir's book. So I advise all of you to read endocrinology from the physiology book so you can understand far better than this also. But this is what we have to correlate our modern science with the homeopathy. So today we are reading the endocrinology. Endocrinology, we repiculate the above topic under the following heading, that is, what is endocrinology, what are the glands and their origins, what is the functions of that glands and the disease associated with, why endocrinology is important in homeopathy, and what is the significance in the practice. So these are the three questions we have the objective of learning this endocrinology. The 2.5 centuries ago, a genius philosopher revolted against the prevailing system of medicine practice. As per his practical and logical understanding, he laid down a set of principles and law of applications with regard to the understanding and practice of new system of medication, that is homeopathy. This man was Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. His foresight was such that we can today confirm those predictions scientifically. It is for this reason that the predictive homeopathy group, under the guidance of Dr. Vijayakar, has taken up the honors of correlating homeopathy with the basic human science. So this is the attempt to understand this whole subject of endocrinology and hence understanding the concept of holistic and holistic, the power of the minimum dose, the power of emotions, coordination, synchronizations of the actions, and much more. The more we dwell into depth of the science, one learns to admire and respect it even more. So now let's understand what is endocrinology. So endocrinology, the Oxford Dictionary says that endocrine comes from the Greek word endon, which means within, and krynos, which means shift, to adjust or to tune, suit to the circumstances. So, sir has given an example. We use a sieves chalni to separate a coarse and fine things, and we can also use different sieves for the sifting. How nicely this gives us the concept of the way in which this dynamic system control and intelligently manage the most intricate functions of the body. As we know, all functions of our body are controlled by the two systems. One is called as the nervous system and another called as the endocrine or hormonal system. They regulate the system with the feedback mechanism. The message or stimuli are carried to and fro by the nervous system, and together they make a combined neuroendocrine system. The endocrine or hormonal system controls the metabolic functions of the body. It means the rate of chemical reaction into the cells, transport of the substance through the cell membrane, and the cellular metabolism like a growth and the secretions from the glandular structure. This is achieved with the help of hormones. Now we go further into detail of what is hormones. So hormones is a chemical substance secreted into body fluid which exert a physiological control effect on other cells of the body. Their control is by a negative feedback mechanism. It works to create a wonders or even to play havoc. So this is very important understanding. Or rather, it gives a normal healthy life or a bizarre set of symptoms to the disease person or even kill him. So when the hormones plays a wonderful role and it is harmonious operations, but when it disturbs, it produces a bizarre set of symptoms. So hormones are two types, general hormones and the local hormones. They are under the control of the hypothalamus in the brain together with the limbic system. So general hormone, which we call as growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, these all are secreted from the anterior pituitary and the target organ, just a growth hormone, targetly affect the whole body as a general. TSH affect the thyroids target hormone, ACTH acting on the adrenal cortex, FSH and LH act on the ovaries and testes. Whereas the few local hormones, which we call as acetylcholine, which is secreted from the glands called as a nerve ending, secretin from the duodenal walls, cholecystokinin from the small intestine, angiotensins from the blood vessels, motilin from the intestine, antidiuretic and oxytocins released from the posterior pituitary, and it acts directly on the kidney, uterus, mammary glands, etc. So, an understanding of the relation between the endocrinology and homeopathy by H.A. Robert. What H.A. Robert says that the modern physiologist's viewpoint is that the vast amount of the illness are traceable to the dysfunctions of the glandular system. So, this means, for example, the growth problem. So, overgrowth or underdevelopment of the whole body or the part. This maladjustment of the children to their environment and also the maladjustment of the adult to their environment and to the relationship are all related to the endocrine imbalance to the same degree. A human being is a unit made up of the mind, body, and the spirit. They are correlated so as to act freely without impediment. When the spirit-like force or a dynamic is in equilibrium, that is dynamic in equilibrium, the dysfunction of one part. So it is also that the functions of the some ductus, the gland, is to secrete a minute quantity of the specialized product into the system. This is the secretion that has a vital bearing on the health of the whole constitution. In many cases, this secretions of the normal gland is so minute that it approaches the homeopathic attenuations. So till now in the medical field, we cannot measure a certain hormones. Okay, there are a parameter, but it was in a so minute doses, so the it act like a homeopathic attenuation, the potentized form, or it's so minute that it works in the whole body. With this concept of the importance of the endocrine glands in maintaining the health, and with almost infinitesimal amount of some of these glandular secretions, we can hardly fail to see the important relationship the homeopathic remedy may hold to the manifestation of endocrine dysfunction and to the balance of the ductless gland themselves. The condition ranging from acne to anemia or diabetes, peptic ulcer, menses-related problem, emotional problems like hysteria and schizophrenia, etc., are due to glandular dysfunctions. Our remedy will not upset the balance of endocrine secretions. The simillimum will fulfill the demand of the system in all its part without stimulating too much those organs which have maintained a relatively balance. It means our remedy affects directly the vital energy which in itself establish equilibrium in those parts which is susceptible. So this is what our medicine directly act on the targeted microcellular mechanism. It does not affect where it was the balance. Where is the imbalance, it will correct it. So by looking at the figure, so organ of the endocrine system, the limbic system. There is a hypothalamus, there is a limbic system, pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, adrenal gland, pancreas, both kidney, testes, and ovaries. So, according to that, their basic functions, hormones at the endocrine system glands. So, in the hypothalamus, it's a central switchboard, the coordinator control through the pituitary gland and secretion of the neurohormones. Limbic system produce neurotransmitter, hence the emotions. Pituitary is the master gland, anterior pituitary giving rise to growth hormone, DSH, ACTH, LH, FSH. Posterior pituitary gives rise to vasopressins and oxytocins. TSH is an energy controller centers. Uh, Parathyroid, maintaining the calcium phosphorus regulator. Adrenaline help to stress manage and secrete the adrenaline and non-adrenaline. Pancreas is a fuel supplier and secreting the insulin. So both kidney are the master chemists acting on the effect of the antidiuretic hormones, and the glands like testis and the ovary directly affecting by the FSS and LH and help in the fertility. So hormone of the endocrine system at glands. So we have a central switchboard, the coordinator control through the pituitary gland. First is the secretions of the neurohormones and neurotransmitter, hence the emotions. The master gland anterior pituitary giving rise to a growth hormone DSH, ACTH, LH, FSH. Posterior pituitary give rise to vasopressins and oxytocin. Energy controls is by the thyroid, TSH, parathyroid calcium phosphorus regulator, uh, ACTH acting on the adrenaline, managing the stress and secretions of the adrenaline and noradrenaline. The pancreas help in the fuel suppliers, so it helps to regulate the glucose metabolisms and secretions of the insulin. The kidney is the master chemist and help to maintain the water balance by secreting the ADH. For reproductions, we have FSH, LH, growth hormone in female and male. In local hormones like acetylcholines are acting on the nerve ending and passing the signals, secreting help in the duodenal walls. Cholecystokinin also from the small intestine, angiotensins in the blood vessel to maintain the contractions and relaxations of the blood vessels, also help in the blood pressure mechanism, and motilin for the intestine. So this was the picturized form of everything and it origins. So particular organs are originate from the particular three germ layers. Some are from the neuroectoderm, some are from the endodermal origins, or some are from the mesodermal origins. So embryology at a glance, the first layer, so neurotransmitters and pituitaries and hypothalamus are the neural in origin. The second pituitary also a neural origins, anterior pituitary origin from the neural tissue and connected to the hypothalamus. Posterior pituitary, it's a specialized epithelial tissue in connection with the pharyngeal wall. So ectoderm to neuroectoderm is a connection at posterior pituitary. The fourth one is the thyroid and the parathyroids, both are arising from the endodermal origins. Then the adrenal, so adrenal has a two variant. One is the medulla and one is the cortex. So medulla is arising from the ectodermal origins and cortex from the endodermal origin. When there is a pancreas, the pancreas, islets of the Langerhans is arising from the endodermal origins. Then the ovaries and testes, all ovaries and testes. See, it was a 10th number. Ovaries and testes are arising from the mesodermal origins, and it was the eighth, the kidney. So kidney has the secreting system which arising from the endodermal origin. So this is what endocrinology associated with the embryology. Now, how it functions. So basic functions of the this system help us to understand that what it was. So the first symptom, hypothalamus control the functions and endocrine. It control the endocrine functions, vegetative functions, and help us to regulate our emotion centers by the secretions of the neurochemicals. Then the limbic system help us to understand, and pituitary help us to understand the behavior, drive, temperature, osmolarity, thirst, and appetite sensor. What we learn in the physiology, applied physiology chapter. Then pituitary. The pituitary help us to control other glands and the specific targeted tissue. For example, anterior pituitary help in overall growth of the body, basal metabolism, the stress management, electrolyte imbalance, fertility, and the birth process. Whereas the posterior pituitary help us in the water balance and maintaining the diuresis and the birth process through the oxytocins. Then the fourth one, the thyroid control the basic rate of metabolism. I need to run fast or I need to run slowly. The fifth one, the calcium and phosphorus metabolism. Hence, the both bone and teeth related problems are associated with the endocrinal system. Then the adrenaline gland help us to maintain the stress management and the mineral balance. So medulla act as a fight or flight response and are ready for an emergency, whereas the cortex maintain the functions of the internal organs and control the cortisol family. So the response to the steroid hormone secretions into the body. From the pancreas, insulin secretion control the from the Langerhans of the cells and maintaining the glucose metabolism. For ADH, it is the electrolyte balance and maintaining the water balance and diuresis. In male and female, it helps us to development of the sexual character, secondary sexual character, sexual drives, and helping into the fertility for the reproductions. In a female, it helps us to understand the pregnancy, birth process, labor, lactations, and menopause. So these are the basic functions of this endocrine at glance. You can read in depth from the endocrinology from the physiology book. Now we have to understand what are the diseases associated with this endocrine system and their layer and their miasm. So the schizophrenia is the seventh layer disorders, the neuroendocrinal disorders, and it is secretions of the some neurochemicals which help to change the behavioral pattern, and that behavioral pattern is due to the emotional upsets. So this schizophrenia is the miasm is SORA, but it is a chronic SORA. Diabetes, as we have learned, the diabetes is the fifth layer disorders. It was written the sixth layer, but it's the fifth layer disorders. SORA, psychosis, and syphilis, the three types of diabetes. The thyroid, it's a fifth layer disease. It's a SORA, psychosis. Even in thyroid, there is a syphilis, autoimmune syphilis. Leukoderma and melanocytes, it's also the fifth layer disease. It's a syphilis. Nephritis, nephrosis, and nephrotic syndrome all are from the mesodermal origins. In nephritis, the inflammation, nephrosis is a functional disorder, psychosis, and in nephrotic syndrome, it goes into destruction of the kidney and parenchyma. Then it is syphilis. The sterility and impotency also considered to be at the fifth layer. It can be sodic, psychosis, and syphilitic based on the causes of sterility. Even dysmenorrhea, the painful menstrual cycle, also it's a fifth layer, and it is also can be a psoric psychosis and syphilis based on the causes associated with the dysmenorrhea. Now we are reading further in detail of the each and every gland and its functions. So the hypothalamus, the master gland, and the pituitary, the conductor of the endocrine symphony, it controls the vegetative functions, endocrine functions, and emotional behavior in association with the limbic system. Now, what is the limbic system? Limbic system is a basal system of the brain that controls the emotional behavior, drive, body temperature, osmolality, thirst, appetite, and body weight. So, the neurotransmitters are released as a response to certain emotions, and hence the behavior of an individual is affected. The release of neurotransmitter can increase or decrease due to sudden shock, prolonged grief, apprehensions, or mortification, and we think of the remedy like gilsemium, staphy, ignatia, colocin, etc. This is called as a state prescribing remedy should be in relation to the constitutional remedy. So this is what we have to understand. So the concept of a genetic constitutional similimum and the state constitutional similimum or phenotypic constitutional similimum or pathological constitutional similimum is from here. Otherwise, we end up only treating disease in man and not the man in disease, which can lead to the suppression, especially so if the vital force immunity is very weak. First, appetite and activity is controlled by the lateral hypothalamus, having a satiety control center in the ventromedial nucleus. Hence, we see that if lateral hypothalamus is stimulated or ventromedial nucleus is depressed, then we have emotions like anger, thirst, activity, rage, which will make us think of the remedy which is very fast, like iodine, arsenic iode, kali iode, mercury, sulfur, arsenic, ammonium, etc. If the lateral hypothalamus reduced or ventromedial nucleus stimulated, then we have reactions like anorexia, thirstlessness, passivity, and tranquility. Thus, in turn, will make us think of remedy like sepia, ignitia, or acid force, lycopodium. These are the grief remedy. These symptoms are part of the facet of that person due to the emotion at that time which is affected his limbic system and the release of certain neurotransmitter. As they are temporary, they guide us on an acute prescriptions of that state. This is called a state prescriptions. Hope you all understanding this. Whenever there is a temporary change in the neurotransmitters which give rise from the limbic system, gives rise to change in the behavior patterns or emotions and certain reactions and a drive, and which gives us a acute prescription, which Master Hahnemann tell us that it is a change dispositions, not the original one. The reaction of the persons and the drives are controlled by the gray area near the aqueduct of Sylvius in the mesencephalon. Our actions are related in some way to this point that it gives a reward, a positive response, or a punishment, a negative center response. It means it controls the reactions of our body's activity, our drives, and reaction to the given situation. These are the center called as a reward or punishment center or satisfactions or aversion center or pleasant and unpleasant center. So simple and important things of this is whenever person goes into certain trauma or circumstances, either they goes into this mechanism activations and that lead to a particular emotions and that emotions gives us the change in the neurochemistry and that neurochemistry change into the behavior pattern and that is a change aspect of the individual. Hence, a rage or a satisfaction is found if there are excess or persistent stimulants. Emotions or any thought process arising from the mind, this system of our body is called as the mind, sit high up in our body like a monarch. Thoughts, even though not seen, are very powerful. A thought is a link of the protein, and if in any way it is too aggressive for the body to tolerate, it gets transformed into some problem in the organ that is most predisposed to ill health in that person. So that is what energy can neither be created nor lost. It just a change from its from. So this is what very important aspect of a thought is a link of the protein, and if in any way it is too aggressive for the body to tolerate, it gets transformed into some problem in organ that is most predisposed to ill health in that person. So that is very important in when the child is born child in the uterus and the mother is thinking certain things and mother is feeling certain things mother having a certain neurochemicals in that neurochemicals secreted into the blood vessels of the mother's blood passing to the placenta goes to the child and if child is susceptible so that makes the child particular organ affected and ill health produced because of that sort so that this is directed by the law of thermodynamics that energy can neither be created nor it is lost, it just changes from its form. So from thought to the pathology. Emotional stress and obesity. Now we have to understand the stress related to obesity. So how obesity happen in the body and their miasm according to that. So how emotional stress affect the obesity. So emotional stress and obesity. So in the primary phase, the stress can lead to increase of the antidiuretic hormones from the posterior pituitary, and in return, the posterior pituitary help to accumulate the water in the system. In return, it produces the edema, puffiness due to water logging, decrease the thirst, increase the weight, and then we have to think certain remedies like acetic acid, uh, apis. So we have the remedy which having accumulations of the water and may lead to the obesity. The second phenomena behind the obesity is based on the emotional stress. So in to bargain the emotional stress, again it stimulates the negative feedback system and increase the adrenocorticotropic hormones from the anterior pituitary. So when the adrenocorticotropic hormones are stimulated, it increases the cortisol secretion from the adrenal cortex. So the effect of that lead to the excessive appetite, and in return it produce a buffalo-like torso and moon face. So we have the called as cretinism due to the excessive cortisol secretions in the body. So increase in the weight because there is a stimulations of the increased appetite and excessive intake of the food and unequal mobilizations and oxidations of the fat. So we can think of certain remedies like opium. Eating is often a release from the stress. Third point, the natural obesity due to the accumulations of the fat because of the reduced basal metabolic rate. So we have a certain remedies like Licaria crab and graphitis. Abnormal feeding regulations, especially in childhood, continue to the adulthood that can lead to the obesity. So we have a remedy, spoiled children lead to the opium, anacardium, and lycopodium, etc. And certain genetic factors. So certain pattern of appetite and fat storage runs in the family due to genetic predisposition. Hence, the cause of obesity are different. The causes of the stimulations of the appetite center and accumulation of fat are also different. Therefore, it should be related with other parameters like thirst, thermal, etc. For the complete understanding of the remedy, we have to understand the point 1 and point 2 are the disease state and so now require a constitutional simillimum. Are you all are understanding that how it is? Because this represent the miasmatic process. Just the accumulations of the water is sauropsychotic. When it takes the place to the accumulation of the fat means the deposition of the fat, the pure psychosis goes in. So this is what you have to understand. So in nutshell, what happened? The stress is there, it stimulates directly to hypothalamus. Hypothalamus signalizes to the pituitary gland. In anterior pituitary, uh, it stimulates the growth hormone. Except growth hormone, all have a target tissue. So in growth hormone, almost all body tissue act on all body tissue. Increase in size, stimulate the mitosis by enhancing the protein and consuming carbohydrates and using storage fat while it stimulates the TSH, ACTH, and everything, and then in return, it gives a negative feedback mechanism that to the hypothalamus, so hypothalamus stop secreting certain hormones. Also act on the posterior pituitary, it stimulates the ADH, so it helps to maintain the water balance, and water balance has to be accumulated. So this can give rise to obesity also. So this is what the our system is working in this way. So when there is a stress, hypothalamus is stimulated, hypothalamus in return stimulate the pituitary, pituitary secretes the hormones and acting on the particular target tissue. And if the target tissue achieves certain process, then the negative feedback system work and the negative feedback system again stimulate the hypothalamus to signalize and stop it. So this is what our endocrine system is working. It is called as the APUD system. We have learned in the theory of separations, amine precursor uptake decarboxylate. Over 50 years ago, this concept came up when the microscopic study on the process of hormone productions of the pituitary gland were undertaken. Cells like those in the pituitary were also found in the gut or the embryonic foregut. They produce a various type of the polypeptides amines, some of which are hormones. Peers named it as the Apod system due to following property because the presence of the fluorogenic amines can take up amine precursors and contain an amino acid decarboxylase and specific immunofluorescence silver impregnations. This is special histochemical study for the identifications of the hormone. It is called as Apod cells. So Apod cells can produce any hormone. Excess can cause epidomas. On the investigation, this condition also can guide us as a miasmatic understanding due to the knowledge of embryonic development. Now, example, the presence of enterochromaffin cells in the gut is the cause of tension diarrhea or IBS. These cells are in a direct control of the brain, therefore the tension related to the gastric problem occur. For example, FT, gastric ulcer, acidity, colitis, etc. Some tension can be due to the nervousness, apprehension, then the remedy that we think of are the gelsemium, argentum, lycopodium, etc. Tension of the businessman will make us think of remedy like Nux vomica. I am reminded of the few words from what I have read and would like to share them with you. He is a fool who thinks that he digests the food that he eats. Actually, we are not aware of any functions that the body goes on performing automatically. But the GIT has a very intelligent mind. Just think of the decisions with which it preferentially secrete and then digest particular ingredient in particular area from the junk and jumble of the food that we may many a time eat indiscreetly. So isn't it mind-boggling? We all know because how GIT work we don't know. Even those who are the vegetarians they can digest. Even the non-vegetarian they can also digest. So our intelligent GIT is working directly which food has to digest and what amount of the secretion has to be secreted to digest this. So this is what controlled by this our GI system automatically. Pituitary glands. So pituitary glands, we have an anterior pituitary and a posterior pituitary. The embryologically anterior pituitary arising from the ectodermal origins. It is the invaginations of the pharyngeal epithelium and posterior pituitary from the endoderm. It is the outgrowth from the hypothalamus. The physiology of this is a master chemist and control the functions of the all other glands and it produces a salt balance, urine productions, the growth of the organisms. Birth processes means the labor, lactational process by the stimulating the prolactin. In the management of the pain, grief, and sense of the smell, it working in the from this hormone. The imbalance of this can lead to the many disease. Depending on the hormone stimulated for the release or inhibition, the particular gland is affected. So if we have prolactinomas, so prolactinoma is the hypersecretions of the prolactin and it leads to the microadenoma, pituitary macroadenoma. So this is what we have the hyperfunctioning. Now why we need to find out why it is functioning high. So what was the things which is psychotic process happening at that level and we need to so this was the imbalance. So depending upon which hormone is affected, the imbalance has to be addressed. Thyroid. So thyroid is arising from embryologic arising from the endoderm, physiologically help in control the metabolism. There is an imbalance, it may produce a hypo and the hyperthyroidisms. As per the conditions, we arrive at either a slow, sluggish picture of some remedy due to reduced basal metabolic rate and of the fast, active, energetic group of remedy due to increased basal metabolic rate. So we have a function that there are certain remedy which directly act on the hypothyroidism. There are certain remedy which directly act on the hyperthyroidism. This is the study from the physiological point of view. Now we have adrenal. Adrenal has a two-part cortex and medulla. So adrenal having a embryology from the endoderm and ectoderm. So medulla is from the ectoderms and the cortex from the endoderm. Physiologically, it is a stress manager for the fight and flight phenomena. It controls the minerals levels in the body and controls the cortisone family, means the corticosteroid into the body. Imbalance, the condition arising due to the stress, pointing out to an area of the state remedy. So there is a water retention causes edema, excessive appetite, melanocyte stimulating hormone. On the stimulation, it deposits the pigment in the cells of epidermis and giving rise to. So there are multiple mechanisms which act on due to the cortisone family working. So hypermelanosis, it is a black discoloration. So we have remedies like lycosis, calibromes. Hyperlipoproteinemia means the liver spot, the brown discoloration, the saddle across the nose and freckles. So we have a remedy like a sepia and lycopodium. Hemosiderosis means the red skin due to excessive depositions of the iron. Nevi, the discoloration due to the interferon injection site, the STAT2. They are discoloration due to the injections of the pigments. It gets absorbed and can later give rise to problem like the malignancy also. And in the skin produce the urticaria. The eruptions are seen on the skin but are not ectodermal in origin. They are due to the histamine release, a response to an allergy. It is released from the injured mast cells causing edema and redness. For example, we can think of the remedy like Apis and Rostox. So another glands which have we have ovaries and testes. So embryologically, they are endodermal in origins and physiologically help in the maintenance of conception and the fertility. Imbalance lead to the male and female infertility, sexual problem, and menses related issues. Pancreas. So pancreas embryologically it derived from the endodermal origin, the islet of the Langerhans. Physiologically, it is the energy release or conservation, so help in the glucose, lipid, and the protein metabolism. Imbalance can lead to diabetes, sudden loss of weight, excessive weight, and the weakness. Parathyroid, again, the embryologically arising from the endodermal origins, physiologically it maintaining the calcium, phosphorus, and electrolyte balance, and affecting the formation of the bones and the teeth. So imbalance of this may lead to the tetany, osteoporosis, and rickets. So we can now say that the homeopathy, the study of the endocrine system is important because it helps in assessing the disease. First, it means the affinity and the progress of the disease and the implications with regard to the remedy. Second, it helps to distinguish between the genetic characteristic and the disease symptoms. It means the physician has an idea as to what is to be cured in an individual. Hence, the understand what is even more important. It means prescribe on the phenotype or genotype. Here, it is very important understanding that when you have to give a phenotype remedy and when you have to give a genotype remedy. The hormone effect, that is a different organ and also on the mind. For example, the significance of some neurotransmitter from the limbic system like the norepinephrine, serotonin, if it is normal, it produces sensation of the well-being, happiness, contentment, increased sex drive, etc. But if it is reduced, then it causes a depression, grief, despair, miserable feeling, sad, loss or reduced sex drive, appetite, insomnia, etc. Hence, we think of remedy like ignatia, natramure, sepia, acid fort, etc. If dopamine is increased, it may lead to the schizophrenia or fearfulness, exuberance, mirth. Here we think of remedy like belladonna, lachesis, cannabis indica, stramonium, hyoscyamus. This is what a thinking process. It is not just applying process. Now, an understanding each cell is an individual unit of the life and it performs the basic functions of the life, nutrition, reproduction, and the defense, as we have learned earlier in this process. To that too very precisely and intelligently when in the health. The mind of each cell corresponds to the mind of individual as a whole. The thought process of the mind is projected in the general constitutions of the individual. In light of the above understanding, we have to gauge when There, the above feelings or reactions are just for the present. It's acute state, just for the present. Feelings and reactions, or form a part and parcels of that individual due to change in the genes, present state. It is called as a phenotype. Hence, one has to understand whether now we are only dealing with the emotion arising from the limbic system, which is actually the reactions of the genetic constitutional of the situation, the genotype. The basic nature will gives us the genetic to the situation, the genotype. The basic nature will gives the genetic constitutional simulum. So we have a differentiate two process. One is if it is a emotional prescribing, it is called as a phenotypic prescribing. And when we consider the basic nature, innate characteristic, will, intellect, moral, we have learned about the GCS, then it is called the genetic constitutional simillimum. So we have to understand and address that when to apply the phenotype and when to apply the genotype. Today, the modern student may scoff, maybe due to lack of the teaching staff at our college at philosophy and organ of study as being unnecessary for the practice, but which actually form the basis of homeopathy. Let us learn about the understanding the basic principle of our science and then correlate it with the endocrinologist finding. Here, the right genetic constitutional simillimum will be useful to set the homeostasis right, especially in light of the present knowledge of the endocrinology, correlation, and other basic human science. This disease conditions is a result of onslaught of certain factors on the basic constitution. Hence, it is important to arrive at a GCS which tells us about the basic nature and the physical tendency predisposition of the patient due to which this present condition has developed. This is the reactions of that particular person to the given circumstances and it is very individuals. Now, as we assess the significance of homeopathy as per the road to the cure and the miasm. As per Dr. Vijayakar chart of separation, the disease of the endocrine system are in the fifth layer of separation. The immune impairment here causes the disease which affect the different organs of the neuroendocrine system and producing gigantism, diabetes insipidus, diabetes mellitus, goiter, hypothyroidism, stress, obesity, hyperpigmentation, diabetes mellitus, tetany, hypercalcemia, renal calculi, osteoporosis, rickets, puberty, sterility, pregnancy, parturitions, lactations, and related problems. So behavior is the functions of the entire nervous system. The change in the biochemical homeostasis affecting the limbic system in association with the hypothalamus leading to the stimulations of the different nerve center causing secretions of the corresponding neurotransmitter. Dr. Vijayakar sir says that taking into consideration on the mental sphere means the delusion, illusion, hallucination, dreams are just a emotional prescribing, which we call as a PCS, or it is a learning of the PCS is later on. We can learn that PCS and what is the difference between the PCS and GCS, emotional prescribing, and hence would not be holistic approach. Therefore, it is very important to consider the physical makeup and the generals of the individual together with the basic inherent nature of the person because each person is born with it. This is how we arrived at the basic genetic constitutional similarium. It is a misunderstanding when it is said that Dr. Vijayakar does not take the mind or the psyche of the patient into consideration. Now, why? Hence, it is very important to know the type of pathological involvement of the organ. That this help us to know that what to approach. So, by understanding the pathology, we have to address how to practice. So, if it is a state of the disease, means the stage when there is only a functional changes or accumulations or a depletions or a condition of destruction, this gives rise to a miasm prevalent at that time. So, according to that miasm, we have to understand the approach. So if it is a physiological in nature, so in physiology there is a change in the biochemistry, change in the neurochemistry. So emotion has to taken into more important, and it is a change disposition. So acute chart and the change sorosyphilitic conditions of the emotion has to be taken into considerations. When this goes into a state of the accumulation, depletions, or a destruction, or a morphological changes. So we need to address that why the morphological changes happen. If it is a constructive morphological changes, it happens because the insecurity at the level of cell. So for that, why the cell need a fortifications and a construction. So we need to understand the mental level. There must be some fear and insecurity, and that fear is based on the genetic predisposition. So in that case, we need to understand the whole genetics of the patient, and to understand the whole genetic patient, we need to address this constructive defense with the genetic constitutional similarity. Whereas the morphological changes related to the destructions, in that destructions we have to understand the destruction is a slow or destruction is a fast. If it is destruction fast going toward the death, then we have to understand what was the change thing happen at that particular circumstance leading the person to the death. So in that case we have to understand the change dispositions and change perceptions ranging toward the death. So it is called as alter perception to the that particular destructive side, but it is a slow progressing psychosyphility. So in that case we have to understand the genes and the genetic aspect of the body. So in that case we have to address that with the genetic constitutional similarium. I will share one photo with all of you to approach of the each disease, that in a SORA what has to be considered, in psychosis what has to consider, in syphilis what has to consider. So we'll share in the group. So this is what the state of the disease gives rise to a miasm, and miasm gives rise to a approach. The extent of the separations, it means the layer of separations with the reference to the Dr. Vijayakar's layer of separations chart. This process to be guidance to the follow-up after administration of remedy. So there are certain examples. The predictive importance gives, according to the chart of layer, the diabetes is the present in the fifth layer of separation. After separation of the cardiovascular problem at the fourth layer, which was suppressed due to joint pain at third layer. After separation of the acidic diarrhea at the second layer, and after separation of the rhinitis at the second or first layer. According to miasm, diabetes can be psoric, psychotic, and syphilitic. As I mentioned, the stress diabetic is psoric in nature. There are hypertensions also psoric in nature. Vascular system is affected. Angiotensin causes constriction of the blood supply, hence the blood supply to the islet affected. Insulin feedback system disturbed. Production of the diffusion of the insulin reduced, and the function of the islet of the Langerhans affected. This is called as a psoric and easily reversible. It is usually endocrinal and can be corrected. Second, when the atherosclerosis of the blood vessels to the Langerhans cells is increasing and it produces a thickening, causes a lack of blood supply, causing long-term lack of insulin, and quietly the disease progress and lead to the vascular accident, stroke, and heart attack, it is psychotic in nature. And if the obliterations of the lumen and total cutoff of the blood supply, producing the ischemia of the Langerhans cells and destructions of the Langerhans cell, it may lead to the complete lack of insulin and plus the fatty accumulations and acidosis and ketoacidosis. So this is called a syphilitic diabetes and destruction. So we see that knowing diabetes and that is it in the fifth layer is not enough. The knowledge of the stage of the disease, hence the miasm, is also very important. We can thus process to have the ability to predict the course of the follow-up after the administration of the remedy, which is a road to recovery, or even maybe it is possible for the compensation only. Cure will occur from syphilis to psychosis to the SORA in the same layer, and then from higher layer to the lower layer. This is very important. The miasmatic reversal is most important. So, for example, we go through the following case, the case of female 47 hypothyroidism with TSH 150. The disease progress as follow. Repeated attack of URTI second layer to UTI second layer, latent SORA, then knee joint pain, backache, hoarseness of the voice, loss of voice, third layer SORA to psychosis, the pleurisy, COX, arteriosclerosis, hypertension, nephritis, hyperlipidism, irregular menses, the fourth layer SORA to psychosis, then hypothyroidism, the fifth layer psychosis, and then neuronitis, the sixth layer SORA. In this case, the blood pressure remained high even as the TSH came down to the 11. She developed renal calculus causing hydronephrosis. Patient underwent a surgical procedure. BP is controlled and TSH went to 7 and mens is regular. So this is what we have to understand how the progress of the disease and then the reversal of the disease. Finally, we see that the understanding of the functioning of the organ help us in understanding the reason that the remedy has been given and how we have related the prescribing rubrics with the functions of the organ. We get a number of the patient who comes to us after doing a usual round of other branches of the treatment, and we are already provided with the diagnosis. We now have to put together our basic understanding of the disease vis-a-vis its origin, affinity, and progress. This will gives us an insight and help us to correlate certain matters. Why the immunity against this particular disease has been affected. So our question is, say for example, a child born with cholestatic jaundice and having this process. So the born with cholestatic jaundice is a congenital cholestatic jaundice. So we have to understand why the immunity of the liver is affected in this child and find out the cause behind that in the mother perception, and then we have to correlate each and everything. So this is what we have to understand. What type the situation precedes this onslaught in this constitution? So we have to understand that also. We have to keep in mind understanding the disease, affinity, progress, and why the immunity has hampered at particular level and what was the situation preceded this. So you have to correlate both a cause and effect. Something drastic has to happen to bring about the change in an otherwise individual, otherwise healthy body or constitution in a state of homeostasis. It means with the effective fighting system, immune system. So let us strive toward the perfections. The limitation is in the homeopath, not in the homeopathy. A system is based on immutable law of nature. And that is what Sir says, ode sapere. So it is the limitations of homeopath only, not the homeopathy. So this will complete the brief of endocrinology. It is not the whole endocrinology. For more understanding, you can go through the physiology book and read endocrinology for your knowledge understanding. And we conclude our session here. So thank you so much with me. And as far as today, our time is so slot is going against our time. So we will make a question answer sessions either tomorrow or next time. If you have any query, let us ask me. I will share the approach of particular disease in a nutshell in the group also. So that will help you to understand for the case presentations and case understanding and practice. So thank you so much. Thank you all for being with me and thank you learning together. Thank you upgrading yourself together. And sir always says sharing is always caring. So thanks a lot being with me. Thank you. So we'll end the meeting. Thank you so much.